we really get there it is. There it is. Okay. Hello, welcome, Ria.
Hello, thanks for having me.
I'm
Thanks for
Kelly and I'm
being here.
co-hosting with Ivana here.
Hi, Ria.
Hello, hello.
Thanks
Thank
for
you so
joining.
much for joining us tonight. We have just had some really great conversation about the other year and talking about you just bring up so many great discussion points in the book, and it's a really fun one to discuss.
Well, I'm so glad to be here. Fire away.
Okay, so what we'll do, Ivana and I will just kick it off with just a few general questions, and then we'll open it up to the group too, and we'll kind of moderate and just throw some more questions at you that way too.
Great.
Okay, with the other year, you do such a really raw and vulnerable job of drawing so much emotion from readers out of the story. And you're asking the question, can one event in our lives, like this half second, change the entire course of our lives? And I think there's so much to really unpack there. To start us off, will you just talk to us about the inspiration for the story?
Absolutely. Love that question. So I am a mother to a now 11 and a half-year-old. So what is that? A tween, I guess. But at the time I was writing this, she was 9, and every year we take her to the beach for her birthday. And it was just a very regular occurrence. And I remember taking her to the beach. There was a red flag that day. And it was one of those moments she went into the water, and I just had kind of a spark of inspiration for this story. And it really hit me almost from start to finish, because I have in my author's note in the beginning that I never planned on becoming a mother. It was a challenge for me to kind of adjust to, but I've always been so interested in those what if moments. Like, what if you did this one thing differently and it changed absolutely everything? So as I was standing there on that beach, this idea of this story, of Kate's story, came to me, but I wasn't really sure if I could do this parallel timeline journey and if I could make it. I've seen the movie Sliding Doors back in the 90s. I loved that movie. But it was just, it was one of those lightning strike moments that hit me. But as I started to write it, I have never written anything that was so emotional and so vulnerable and made me really tap into a mother's grief. I obviously have not lost a child, but I feel like I actually went there when I was writing it, and it was very, very challenging for sure.
I was going to see if Kelly was on because she had a question oh yeah, Kelly, this is perfect. If you're free, do you want to ask your question right now? Because I feel like it ties in perfectly.
I apologize that I just got on late. My daughter's best friend's getting married. We've been like having tons of people in and out of our house.
No, that's fine.
Well, I think my question, hi, first of all, the book,
Hello.
hi. I have 2 children, and I cannot even imagine how that would have felt to have that happen. So I liked the chapters when she was alive and doing things.
Me too.
But yeah, I was just kind of wondering, did you do any research with the grief to learn how that all process worked out? And the only reason I asked that is, I mean, I'm learning. My mom, just like January will be 3 years, and grief has just been such an interesting process to me so what kind of research did you do is kind of my question.
Yeah, I think grief in general is so interesting, how everyone experiences it differently, and how sometimes for people it can be this really beautiful, positive, transformative experience, and it changes their life completely. And then for others, sometimes we just can't get out of that grief, and it never leaves us. It sticks with us. So, I mean, I've experienced grief firsthand, but not on that level. My aunt lost her only daughter her 18-year-old daughter in a car accident where my aunt was driving and her daughter was not wearing a seatbelt, and my aunt didn't have a scratch on her, and my niece died. And to see that so up close and personal, and actually to watch how my aunt, she never dealt with it. She never talked about it. She just went on, carried on as normal. So I did talk to, it's always interesting with research. I think there's an element that's very important, but then there's also, for me, all I had to do was tap into my worst fear as a parent. And like, how would I, as a single mother too, I'm not a single mother, but how would I do that? How could I live in the same house? How could I go to work every day? How, so it was a very kind of personal, internal process on the page. And I mean, I know the different stages of grief and had her kind of go through some of those, but it wasn't a very research driven part of the book. It was just a little bit more visceral.
Well, Kelly, do you care if I ask one more quick? One more quick thing is being a nurse. The scene on the beach, I was like, whoa, she got this down to it. Like in the ambulance and everything. I was like, I felt like I was right there.
Well, that means a lot. I had some EMTs that I talked to because I was like, I have been on the beach a million times, but like, how would that be handled and all of that? So those types of things I did do some research for because I wanted it to be as accurate as possible.
Okay.
Yeah, we were talking in our book club just a little bit about the juxtaposition of the two timelines and how, you just feel so heavy in the timelines where Olivia is not there, and then just anticipating that lightness coming. She's coming back in the other timeline. So you're like, okay, hang on. How was your writing process? What was that like? Did you write each timeline linearly and then mesh them together, or did you go as the book is read?
I literally wrote it exactly as it appears on the page. The reason being, I could not stick with the sad, the chapters where Liv is gone. I needed a break as the writer. So it was very much like this. But then at the end, when I was editing it, I pulled both timelines separately. And actually in the original draft of this, I had the timelines flip-flopped. So the scenes, the chapters where Olivia is gone were the ones that started the book. And then the ones where she lived were kind of the B storyline. And I flip-flopped that because I felt like we needed to start off with getting to know Olivia and all of that a little bit more before we lose her. But yeah, I toggled back and forth just as it is on the page. But again, like I said, I pulled them apart, read them from start to finish. And because we followed the book in seasons, I wanted to make sure we lined up and hit certain things in both timelines.
Yeah, I can see how you would need a little break in the action there.
Yes. I mean, when I was copy editing and proofing this book, so a lot of people don't know, when you write a book, you literally, when you're done with the book, you're just getting started. You have to read this book, look at this book about 15 more times. And so on our very last proofread, I was like, I can't read this book again. Like I'm done. I'm emotionally spent. I can't ever look at it again. So it was very, very emotional to have to constantly reread and tweak it.
Were there any other major plot changes that took place as you were putting the novel together?
Yes. So Michael, Kate's ex-husband, was actually the very, very first draft. They were married. They were kind of, happily married. And he was just kind of an interesting character. And then when I actually sold the book, Michael was the ex-husband, but he was fighting for custody of Olivia. And it was very, very kind of acrimonious and a little bit of a typical story. So I wanted to shift that a little bit and have her kind of trying to choose between these men in her life. So that was really the major plot change. And then Kate's job changed to an agricultural engineer versus a regular engineer, but no big, huge plot twist other than that, or changes other than that.
Okay. I always like to hear about, just how the book came to be. How long did it take you to write the book?
So I'm a weirdo. I am a fast and furious writer. Some of you may not know. So I'm also, though I'm an author, I'm also what's called a book doula.
Yeah, good. I was going to ask you about this too. So that's perfect.
So my like quote unquote day job is helping other people birth their books into the world. So I have to constantly toggle between my work and their work. I work on a ton of different books at once for other people. So my deadlines are always really fast. Like I write books sometimes in 1 month, sometimes in 3 months. But for this book, I had written 4 previous books with another publisher, and I decided to part ways with them and was honestly very burnt out at the time that I wrote this book. I had lost a little bit of my joy of writing. The business was just crazy. I was, again, just working with hundreds of other people on their books, and really allowed this book to hit me, that inspiration, that joy that I'd been looking for again. When I wrote it. And so this was the first book in 4 years that I wasn't on a deadline. I didn't have to turn it into a publisher in a certain amount of time. So I actually allowed myself, I think all in all, it maybe was like 6 months kind of off and on of writing it. But it was so fun to not have that looming deadline and, the pressure of having to turn something in. I wrote something that I really felt super strongly about. So it was really nice to be able to take time with this book. I think if I'd been under the pressure and under the gun with this book, it would have been really hard because it was so emotional and I needed space and breaks as I was reading it along the way.
Yeah, that makes sense. Will you talk a little bit more about your book doula business? Like, what does that look like? I've been on your website and was like kind of poking around a little bit. But can you talk to us more about what you specifically do in birthing the books?
Yeah. So when I became a writer, so I've been at this almost 20 years, actually. I had a book come out when I was 22. It was a novel. It was terrible. And the whole process made me realize that I didn't know anything about publishing at the time. I just really wanted to be published. I was still in college and all my professors were getting published. And I realized, like, okay, I went to college for the craft of writing, but they never taught us about the business. They never taught us how to get published. They never taught us how to get paid, how to read a contract, none of that. So as I navigated my way along in the publishing world, I really started sharing with other writers, like what I was learning, what to do, what not to do. And I kind of created over the years this little side hustle, helping other people with whatever they needed. So editing, ghostwriting, book proposals, you name it, I did it. And then at the top of the pandemic, the side hustle had gained so much momentum that I turned it into a legitimate business. And really, people come to me, they say, I have an idea for a book, I want to get published. And then I actually figure out what that author's goals are, what publication path is the right path for them, and then the process to get it out into the world, whether they want to land an agent and get published or they just want to put it out on their own. So to date, I've helped hundreds and hundreds of first-time authors land agents and book deals, become best-selling authors. I work with a lot of celebrity, I do a lot of celebrity ghostwriting and work with public figures, but my sweet spot is really working with first-time authors who want to get their work out into the world and can do it in a way that feels really good for them. Because as most of I feel like this industry, you're being an author is really romanticized, and it's like, oh gosh, you're an author. It must just be so awesome all the time. And it's a business, and there are a lot of tough parts of it and a lot of things we don't talk about. So I'm just super passionate about helping people know, like, go in with their eyes wide open and know what they're getting themselves into and doing it in a way that feels really fun for them.
I love that. We've hosted a lot of debut authors here and for chapters and chats, and it's just so fun to hear their excitement and just watch as they get their first book out into the world. So I'm sure that's so fun for you to be a part of that.
Debuting, there is nothing like if I could just go back and live in my debut year, there's nothing like debuting. It's so fun. Before the publishing industry crushes all your spirits and then you become invincible. I'm just kidding. But it's such a special time getting your book out into the world for the first time.
Do you keep in touch with those authors then once they've been, released sort of, and the book's been
Yeah.
released?
So I'm kind of the matchmaker, I match them. If they want to get traditionally published, I help them create either their whole book or what's called a book proposal for nonfiction books. I pitch them to agents and editors. Some of them hire me, to help with their books. And then, yeah, a lot of my clients are kind of repeat customers. I don't really advertise any of my services. I'm word of mouth referral only. I prefer it that way. And yeah, so it's a really cool, kind of cyclical, business. And it's just been so cool to watch other people's books, like kind of go out into the world. And when they came to me, it was just an idea in their head. So it's really, really gratifying.
That's awesome. I'm just like excited hearing you talk about that, and just can see your passion for that too. Last month we hosted Laura Love Hardin, the author of The Many Lives of Mama Love and the ghostwriter for Anthony Ray Hinton. And can you talk a little bit about ghostwriting and what that experience is like for you? That's so interesting to me, about how you need to be in somebody's head, and then how is ghostwriting different than writing your own novel?
Definitely. That's such a great question. So ghostwriting I feel like it's a very specific skill set that I think can be learned, but you are so right. You have to have such a synergy with that person. And I've said no to a lot of gigs actually, because I just don't think I would be the best writer for that person. But it's a very intimate personal relationship, where I think one of the cool things about ghostwriting is when you have a subject and you're interviewing them, you kind of figure out how to extract the best material from them. So whether that is writing, whether it's interviews and you're transcribing, knowing what questions to ask. I started out as a journalism major in college, so I love asking questions. And then it's like this big puzzle trying to fit everything together in the right order and making sure you sound like that person. That's another skill set, is being able to adapt to different people's voices, which is not always easy. And so I think the difference, especially because the ghostwriting I've done is all nonfiction, and I love writing nonfiction. I love reading nonfiction, but I am a fiction writer. So when I get to write my books, I'm just off in my own world. With ghosting, you feel like a different responsibility. But the cool thing about that is you do the writing, you get paid for it. And then they're the ones that are out doing all the social media stuff, doing the events. And I actually like that part of it, that once I'm done with it, I'm done and can kind of move on. That's how I am as a writer. In general, like this book, I wrote this now almost 3 years ago. And a lot of readers don't realize that we are always having to revisit what we've published, because the publishing industry moves so slowly. So a lot of times by the time we do these events, we're like, wait, what was the story that we wrote? What are those characters? Because it has been so long. So it's such an interesting industry in general.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Kelly in the comments had a question too, just kind of circling back to the other year and the emotion that was coming across in the audiobook. Did you choose Brittany Presley? I listened to a ton of audiobooks, and I know that a lot of readers do too as well. Brittany is incredible. I'm just wondering how that process went to have her narrate.
Yeah, so they sent me, I think it was like 3 or 4 different people to choose from. And it was like hands down her. I was like, this is her, this is Kate. Yes. So I was so honored that she said yes, because she's narrated a lot of really big books. And the cool thing, we just found out the audiobooks are now not all audiobooks, but most audiobooks are now available on Spotify. So if you have a Spotify subscription, you can start listening to audiobooks and not have to pay, that separate price. So that's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, she's so talented. A few of us too just listened to The Unmaking of June Farrow, and we're hosting Adrienne Young next month, and Brittany narrated that book as well.
That's so amazing.
Yeah, yes. So as far as the different genres that you've written, it sounds like you've written a ton across the board. What do you classify the other year as? We were kind of talking, we're like, what is it? What would you say it is?
That's a great question. I
Yeah.
mean, that was the tough thing. So before this, I had really in fiction wise written suspense, or what's considered domestic suspense. And so this was a huge departure. This is not, I mean, I guess there's some suspense, but this is a totally different book. So they actually classified, I don't love the term women's fiction, but they classify it as that, or kind of book club fiction, actually with a touch of magical realism. Little speculative fiction, but I would say if you're going to put it in a genre, it would be women's fiction.
Okay. Yeah, we were talking about that. Rebecca, also, I wanted to mention this too. Where are you? Rebecca, she kind of connected me with you, and you guys go way back, it sounds like. And so she had encouraged me to reach out, and I'm so glad that she did. But Rebecca was talking about the ending and how it felt like a little bit like kind of magical, like in like a 90s way, in the best way.
Wait, yes. Yeah, the ending, I wanted the reader to experience this book in the way that they wanted to experience it. So if they wanted to believe in one of the realities or in both, the epilogue is there to really allow you to believe that both lives are possible, that she could be living both of these parallel lives, or no matter which one you kind of gravitated more toward, to know that she's going to be okay regardless of how it ends up. And that, I mean, that's my whole belief system in life, is no matter the tragedies we go through, what steps we veer off into, or what lanes we swerve into, that we kind of end up where we're supposed to, no matter what. And that was my question going into this, like, would Kate end up kind of where she was supposed to, even though this horrible, horrible thing has happened to her?
In your discussion questions in the book, did you write the discussion questions in the book?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so one of them was like, where do you see Kate in 5 years?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna spin that back to you.
God. Well, and I guess it just depends, right? Like which version. I mean, to be quite honest, I was not going to have Kate end up with any man in either version. I was like, she doesn't really need anybody. But then my editor was like, you got to throw the readers a bone. They've been through this really tough journey. So I think in the version that she's living, that Liv is living, I really see Kate having loosened the reins a little bit and becoming more autonomous, and allowing, Michael to really be part of Liv's life. And maybe she's with Ian, maybe she lives in Serenby, maybe she doesn't. But I see her as a very like independent person with really great relationships, and allowing herself to change and grow. And in the other, I mean, honestly, the grief year, I felt like she changed and transformed a lot faster and had a lot more acceptance. So she might be with Ian and her dog in Serenby, or she might be somewhere else too. I mean, I think she's hopefully in a good place, regardless.
Yeah, and Sarah in the comment or in the chats kind of had that same question. Yep. How'd you decide on the ending? Who you chose Kate to end up with her 3 male interests?
Did anyone want her to end up with Jason?
Some did.
Yes, Sarah did. Yeah.
I've gotten a lot of like, not flack about that, but like, I wanted her to end up with Jason, but I just feel like that he's kind of a unicorn, like best friend, all this stuff. But, a romantic partnership can really shift and change all that. And I really wanted her to like vote for the friendship versus something that could possibly fizzle out over time.
That's a good way to put it. I like that. Vote for their friendship.
And speaking of Serenby, there's been so many questions about, the community and your experience with it. And
Yes.
I was saying that, it's funny because where Liv was vacationing when the accident happened, I've been to Santa Rosa and loved that area, but I know some people may have, but I did not know anything about Serenbe before this
Has anybody been to Serenbe ever? Oh my gosh, it is. A lot of people didn't think it was a real place, but it's a real place. In fact, the reason I chose the first time I went to Serenbe with my husband Alex, we were like, it felt like a movie set. It felt either like people are committing murders and burying bodies in backyards and trying to cover it up, or like a Stepford wife kind of, it felt fake almost. It didn't feel real. And so when we went there, I was like, I've got to write a book that, takes place here in some capacity. But a few years ago, during the pandemic, actually, like so many people, we were like, we got to do something or get out of here. So we went to Serenbe, and they actually had a farm internship that they were doing. And it was, very much like in the book. We were like, we're going to sell everything and move to Serenbe and become farmers. That's what we're going to do. And when my husband and I visited, Serenbe has a lot of money. They have beautiful homes. And this cabin, I put like the real cabin in the book because it was where people go to die. Like my daughter stepped in there and she was like, no, there's no way we can live here. But it was such an interesting concept to me that I wanted to like put it in the book and see, what farmer me would have been like if I had lived vicariously through Kate. But Serenbe is a very interesting community. I think everybody should go at least once to experience it.
How far is it from? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, it's been added to the list.
I was gonna say, where, like, how far is it? Is it close to where she was?
Santa Rosa?
Yeah.
Oh, is Serenbe close to where?
Yeah.
So Serenbe is right outside of Atlanta, actually.
Oh, okay.
But Santa Rosa, so like I have such a relationship with Blue Mountain Beach and Santa Rosa, and yeah, I just see in the comments Sundog Books. But it's so funny. I even like took this book in to them and was like, Sundog Books is in this book, and I still don't think they carry my book, which is funny. But they're very particular about that. But I love, we go to Santa Rosa every year. I've been going since I was a kid. So it was fun to kind of write about that little slice of Florida.
Yeah. Yeah. We're heading there next month. So I'll have to check out Sundog. Maybe I'll bring your book and say, hey, did you know?
Did you carry this? Did you carry this book?
Do they give a reason? I'm so curious.
No, I don't know for sure that they don't.
Okay.
I just brought it in that day and had like the little, page earmarked with them, but they've carried, I've done some signings there before. But they are their stocking method's really, really interesting. I love that bookstore though. It's one of my faves to go into.
Okay. I've got a couple questions written down from Lana. I don't think Lana, I don't think you're on, are you? Let me see. Lana H. No. Okay. So Lana submitted this question ahead of time in our chat, and she might be watching the recording later. We have a lot of people that do that. So she was asking, did you consider any alternatives for the ending? Like, was it always going to be that kind of choose your own thought, or did you ever have a moment where you thought, oh, okay? And she's also wondering about Mike. She said Mike is curiously absent from the version where Liv dies. Are you suggesting Mike had perhaps different motives regarding reconciliation?
Ooh, those are great questions. So originally the ending, I was not going to include that epilogue. I didn't really think we needed it. But because we have this prologue before, her world kind of splits into two, I really did want to kind of have this ambiguous, it could be either version. And again, like I said, the only major difference is I was going to maybe make her not have ended up with Ian in one version. And then Mike, yeah, I just think, they had such love for each other, but if your child dies and you live in separate places and you're divorced, that sometimes people just drift from your life when you don't have that tether to keep you there. And it was very interesting in one life how he just kind of comes back in, and then in the other he's absent. And I think that's really interesting with certain relationships, how circumstances can change really our entire path with that person.
Mhm. I think that's true. Sarah, in the comments, what book are you currently reading, and are you working on another novel? I know the answer to the second one, and I'm excited to hear you talk about it.
I am reading, it's called, I was looking at it, it's right up there. Thank You for Asking Thank You for Listening, by Julia Whelan. God, I freaking love this book. So I saw her speak. She's like an Audible narrator, superstar. And she gave a keynote speech at Writer Fest Nashville, which is a conference in Nashville that I love. And I didn't know that she wrote fiction, and it's kind of a rom-com, but it's so good. And I'm just loving that. And such a great book. And then I just read Emma Gray, who I think you're gonna have on Love Note. Oh, love that book. And my next book with this publisher is kind of similar to that book. So that's kind of a good comp. But yes, I have 2 books coming out next year. One on March 1st, which is a thriller called Don't Forget Me, which is really my first like true murder thriller, very quick read. And then my next book in this genre, which also deals with kind of this alternate time warp parallel journey thing, is called In Every Life, and that comes out August 6th. So I'm super excited. They're totally different books, but I'm very excited about them both.
Are they both with the same publisher, or are they different?
2 publishers. So the thriller is with Thomas and Mercer, and then In Every Life is with HarperCollins. My imprint is Harper Muse.
Okay.
Fun to do 2 different genres like that.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. I've not done that before. I've not published with 2 different publishers, especially so close together. So I'm kind of doing it as an experiment to see how I like it.
Mm-hmm. I saw that the one for August is, like you said, another kind of sliding doors type. I was reading about that one, and I was like, I'm a sucker for sliding doors, anything. So I think that's
me too.
Awesome.
Yeah, I really love with this publisher. This was my first foray into kind of playing with time. And this upcoming book, it's about a woman whose husband is dying of terminal cancer, and his one wish is for her to find someone new to love before he goes. And she thinks he's crazy. And later in the book, she makes a wish and wakes up in this alternate reality without him, kind of living a different life. So in that version, in this book, she is aware of this other life she's living, whereas in the other year, Kate doesn't know that she's experiencing these 2 different lives. So that's going to be really fun. So this publisher is very pro playing with time. I think that's going to kind of be my thing with them going forward. And it's been so fun because I'm someone who really loves thinking through all those different scenarios.
Awesome. Can you tell us about the thriller a little bit, what that one's about?
Yeah, so thriller is called Don't Forget Me. And this is about a woman named Ruby who moves to this kind of prestigious community with her husband and teenage daughter. Once she moves, her daughter disappears, and then her husband leaves her. And when the book starts, she is out rowing. She loves to row, and she's on this man-made lake, and a body pops to the surface of the water. As the investigation gets underway, everyone in this neighborhood thinks that the man in the water is Ruby's missing husband, except Ruby claims she's never seen this man before in her life. So you kind of figure out like who's telling the truth, who's lying. There's a fun true crime club in the neighborhood called the Murderlings, where they try to solve these true crimes. So that book I'm really excited about it. It was really fun to write. I don't know why I've not written about murder earlier, because I was like, this is fun. So it's going to be a really fun read, I think, for people.
Oh, awesome. Give us all the murder.
Yeah, what's the name of that one?
That one's called Don't Forget Me.
Okay.
I sent you that book. Did you not get it?
No, I didn't get it.
I sent it. I mean, like weeks and weeks ago.
Oh, well, because I've been on the lookout, and it's not up on NetGalley yet either.
Yeah, gosh, is it not on NetGalley? That's crazy. Okay. Well, I will double check that I had the right address, because I have the receipt and everything.
Oh, shoot, sorry about that. I've been like, oh, okay. Yeah, and yes, I'll message the group when I find it up on NetGalley too, because I've kind of been stalking NetGalley to see.
I thought it was up on NetGalley. I thought they
I've been stalking for
I'll
months.
send you that widget.
Oh, thanks. You've been looking too, Rebecca. Yeah, I know, because I'm like, I gotta get my hands on this. Okay. Do you have you mentioned that you're having fun writing the murder book. Do you have a preference or like a favorite genre you've written? Like you said, the book club fiction, nonfiction, this domestic suspense, and now like a true thriller. What are you gravitating more towards, or like what is most fun for you to write?
I really love writing the types of books that I like reading. And of course, I mean, I love reading suspense and thriller, but I really do like a lot of this like more emotional women's fiction. I think it's, especially this book that I have coming out in Every Life, because it's not so riddled with grief. It's a little bit more like, uplifting and romantic, but still has that depth. So I really love, I think right now that's my favorite genre, but I will always, always love suspense and thriller too, for so many reasons. I think if you can ever, just keep the readers turning pages, those are the best types of books.
How fun for you to like dabble back and forth between a few things, and like to be able to have different publishers that allow you to just be a different type of writer. Like you don't have to feel like you're pigeonholed into one thing.
Completely. And I'm really thankful that my agent lets me play. Like I've come to her because I want to return to nonfiction too at some point. And she's like, cool, yeah, let's try that. And a lot of times with a publisher, you do have to stay in one box, in one lane. It's one of the reasons I left my previous publisher, because they're like, you're a domestic suspense writer and there's no room to kind of play. And I think if you are writing stories for a living and you can't play on the page and try new things, and you're not really growing as a writer. So I think it's super important to be able to try different things.
Yeah, and that keeps it more exciting for you, like you said, like getting that joy back. And that's going to translate to the page too. Like if you're just cranking things out that you're not feeling like 100% like passionate, or you have this idea that you want to explore and you feel like you can't, that's hard. That's
Completely.
hard.
I agree.
Okay, we have a couple questions in the chat again. Which one of your backlist books would you recommend if this is our first book of hers?
Oh, okay.
Which one would you like best? Okay.
My true debut, what I consider my true debut, not Her Daughter, which came out in 2018, is still the book from my heart. It's probably my favorite book that I've written. It's the most raw. I did write that book in a month. That book changed my life though. But that's about a woman who kidnaps a 5-year-old to save her from her abusive mother. So it's kind of a reverse kidnapping, if there is such a thing, a kidnapping for good. I love that book, and I love all the books for different reasons.
What was that one called?
That
Havana. I was going to say that takes place in Chicago.
It does.
Too.
Yes, it takes place in Chicago, which I lived for over 10 years, and kind of travels across the country in that book as this woman and this 5-year-old are on the run. And then Until I Find You, which was my third book, that's about a blind widow who thinks her 3-month-old baby has been swapped for another baby, but no one in her community will believe her. So that was one of my biggest challenges as a writer, to write from a blind woman's perspective. And that's very kind of suspense. There's been a script written for that book. So fingers crossed that actually gets made sometime in my lifetime. The film industry moves at a snail's pace.
Yeah.
For sure.
That's just amazing how many, how busy you've been through the years, not just coming up next year, but just, in your whole career.
Yeah, it's strange. I mean, I think in this industry, or used to, you could, like, I always reference Donna Tartt, who wrote The Secret History and The Goldfinch. She writes one book every 10 years, and then it's like an instant hit. But today, and I talked to a lot of writers about this, to stay quote unquote relevant, if you are not putting out a book a year, or sometimes 2 books a year, the industry kind of forgets about you. So it is this constant balance between being able to take your time to be a creative instead of, the social media person and a salesperson and a marketing person, and there's so little time for writing now, that it is really hard to ride that creative wave and honor that without, like, also having to pay attention to the business and keep your publishers happy and the teams happy. So it's a precarious balance. And I don't really know. I don't actually remember writing any of my books. I know that sounds really strange, but I kind of get in this flow state with when I'm writing, and when I'm done, I'm like, did I write that? I don't remember writing that. So it's a very strange out of body experience every time.
Yeah. Yeah. And some of the authors that we have chatted with too have said, like, you think of, as an author, you think like, oh, I'm just going to go write at my laptop with my coffee by myself. And like now, especially with social media and stuff, like they're like, oh, I am an insular person, but like here I am out in the world. Like, so
It's
really
my
prepared
biggest.
for this. Yeah.
I am so passionate about this very thing, because most writers I know are introverted, and we did sign up to sit in our pajamas behind a computer talking to no one, writing, and then we now are expected to be all of these things, to be out in front, to understand like how to be an influencer, how to be this and that, and so I constantly push back on that. I actually deleted all my social media except Instagram. I'd love to be an author without it, even though I so appreciate the community, but all of it has become such a distraction from creativity, and the emphasis is on that. I feel most writers I know spend 80% of their time marketing and sales and building their platform, and about 20% writing. And I think it should be flip-flopped for sure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. I want to get to this question. Anna, do you think the pressure from publishers causes writers to write books that flop? I can't see. There's like a thing in my way. I can't see what that says.
For ones that they don't put their heart into. Yeah, I mean, the thing with a book flopping, not so. I am a control freak, and I have entered an industry where I have zero control over how my book does. And that I talk to so many authors who are so wildly successful, and we all carry around this like low level anxiety because you're only as strong as your last book's sales. And sometimes you can have everything stacked so perfectly for a book's launch, and it just doesn't hit the way you want it to hit. But I do think the pressure, these timelines are so short, the writing timelines, that a lot of times it's a little bit churn and burn. You're having to fabricate these like stories and work super fast. And then typically while one book is out and you're promoting that book, you're already editing at the same time another book, and then you have to be pitching another book. So it's just this constant cycle that is really hard to even know, like, am I writing something good, or is it going to succeed? But I've had to let a lot of that go and just really try to focus on the story. When I release it out into the world, it doesn't belong to me anymore. It belongs to the reader, and then I'm moving on to the next thing. That's the only way I can stay sane in this.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like a grind. And I think like that must be so hard to get to the point where you've worked on something so hard, and then you're like, okay, this is in the reader's hands now, and it's whatever they decide to do with it.
and yeah, and just the nature of, reviews. And I got actually with this book very early on, I don't read reviews, but on Goodreads, that someone, I was like looking for something to include in my newsletter, and I saw this 1-star review, and I'm always interested. I actually want to do a book of all of my author friends' funniest 1-star reviews, like a
Yeah.
compilation, because, oh my gosh, it's just hilarious. But this one was saying about this book that I had, as the author, sexualized a 9-year-old, that I had sexualized Liv in this book, and that I was just this cringy white woman, trying to speak Spanish. And like, I'm married to a Spanish, my husband's from Spain and Mexico. And I mean, not that any of that matters, but the sexualizing the 9-year-old comment really got to me. And I'm like, a lot of readers could read that and be like, I'm not reading this book. So that is the part of this, when you are vulnerable, you do finally get your publishing deal and your dreams are coming true and you put your work out there, and it can be just kind of killed with, bad reviews, or it doesn't sell well. So there's just a lot of iffy, uncontrollable factors that go into it. So I think you have to be really secure in why you're doing this in the first place, and not just living for these big successes that happen but then are gone in an instant. I think you really have to love the craft and the business to a certain degree to be able to to hang in there.
Yeah, definitely like need a thick skin when, like you said, reviewers, that's one thing, but then when you get a comment that feels like unfair or you don't agree with it, like that would be hard not to be like, but that's not true, you just want to stand up
Sure.
for yourself, or
Oh yeah, and your coach, do not ever respond, do not ever engage. But sometimes that's definitely hard, but I think that is the nature of today, right? Like anybody can say whatever they want behind their computer screen.
Right.
And I see it with celebrities, and a lot of my clients who dealt with just the worst things possible. I mean, getting death threats and horrible things, and they just have to turn it off. Yeah, it's wild.
So Dee has an interesting question here. You were talking about how you have so little control in the publishing industry too. As far as like titling the book or even the cover, did you have any control with those sorts of things? The cover is amazing. I love it so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, how did the title and the cover play out?
This is my only title that I have ever. So a lot of authors, you come up with a working title, obviously, while you're writing it. And I'd say 9 times out of 10, the title gets changed, because sales and marketing looks at what words are trending, what's been used, what hasn't. And the other year, I was like, this is the title for this book. It has to be the title. And the team loved it. They didn't even throw out any other options.
Wow, that's rare.
It's my only title ever, that a publisher has kept. And then for this cover, it was the only one they sent me, but I really loved it because I couldn't really imagine what they were gonna come up with. And then the cover for the next one, In Every Life, it's my favorite cover of any cover I've ever had. I'm so excited about that cover.
Have you showed it yet? Have you showed the cover yet?
Yeah, it's on my,
it's on my
Is that on your Instagram?
Oh my God, I love it so much. It's
beautiful.
That's called In Every Life, but it's kind of ethereal, and I think it pops way more than this cover even. So I'm super excited about that.
Oh, I'm gonna have to go find that. Okay. Oh yeah, and Dee's other question, was there any pressure from either of your publishers to slightly change your name? For example, Patty Henry Callahan uses that name, and also Patty Callahan, to distinguish like her two genres, or kind of her two works.
I have begged to use a pen name because no one can pronounce my name except you did, Kelly. You pronounced my name correctly.
It's
so
Rhea Frey, correct?
It's Rhea Frey. I even say it like I do phonetically, like on my Instagram and stuff, like Rhea, like Leah, Fry, like French fry, I guess.
Yeah.
But I asked that going into the thriller genre, like, should I just do a pen name to differentiate myself and have something that people can pronounce? But they actually wanted me to just continue to build the brand under my real name. But I've thought of a million different pen names that I'd love to have,
Ooh.
but
Do you have a favorite
yeah.
pen name?
Well, I was gonna partner with my former business partner whose wife, he's actually the inspiration for this book that's coming out next year. But he had to step away from writing because his wife was going through terminal cancer. And his middle name is Hamilton and my middle name is Blair. So we were gonna write under the name Blair Hamilton,
Oh,
which
yeah.
was really fun. But yeah, or just something really simple that people can't mispronounce.
I love
Maybe
it.
you'll have to do Blair.
Here's the in every life. I know it's kind of glary, but like a woman
Oh, yes. Oh, I do see it. Oh, yeah.
There's a woman, she's upside down. Yeah, it's kind of hard to see, but
And the
yeah, I'm sorry, my
green.
glare. I
Yeah.
didn't see how glary it was, but it's beautiful.
thank you.
That's great. I love that. Are you able to share with us a few of some of your favorite books that you have read recently, or ones that stick out to you as favorites from different genres? I know you said you like
Oh my
nonfiction
God.
and thrillers, and
There's
sounds
so
like you read pretty
many.
broadly.
Yes, I mean, I read, I mean, you should see my nightstand. It's just ridiculous. So I actually do read a ton of nonfiction, just with my clients and my business, like trying to keep up with what's going on. I'm reading a book now, a nonfiction book called The Body Code, by Dr. Bradley Cooper, I believe his name is, like the actor. And it's all about our body's ability to naturally heal, from like a bioenergetic perspective. I'm super interested in like metaphysics and neuroscience, and I'm a total nerd with that type of thing. So I'm always reading something about how our bodies are able to heal themselves. So any kind of nonfiction like that, I absolutely love. And ironically, in our household, we are reading a ton with my daughter. She loves Shel Silverstein, all the poetry. I don't know if anybody read any of his poems growing up, with like the crazy illustrations. And then, like I said, I'm just finishing up that Julia Whelan
Yeah,
book,
thank
and
you
I'm
for
reading.
listening.
Yeah. And then When I'm Dead by Hannah Morrissey. Yes, I love, gosh, she's great. I get a lot of my books from Book of the Month Club picks. I just love their books and their selection. That's how I found Emma Gray. A lot of debut authors I read through there. And then Vanessa Lilly, who's a great friend of mine, her book came out on Halloween, Blood Sisters, and it's the start of this amazing series. It's phenomenal. Her book's doing so well, and I'm just so happy for her.
Oh, I have that one. I haven't read it yet, and that's an amazing cover too. I didn't know that was going to be a secret.
And it's Target's book club pick. Well, I think it was the book club pick for November.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's done, but yeah, it's a really fantastic read.
That's awesome. We're always so curious what people are reading. Any other questions that I missed, or anybody else they want to hop on and
Rebecca
ask?
I can't be on here without asking her.
I was gonna say, yeah.
This is like I want to hug her. So it's funny because I was talking about the timeline before you jumped on, and I said, oh, maybe it was after the pandemic. And I'm like, no, I've been following you since you guys first went to Serenity. In fact, that's one of the reasons, because we were all sheltering in place, and I found that so cool. By the way, you mentioned Hannah. She's my neighbor. And the book she wrote is Porter's School.
It's so crazy. What a small world this is.
Yeah. So I have a question. So a couple of the girls, this was their first read, and I did tell them that I contacted you over, like, what are you classified as? Because I told them all, I did a deep dive on you. I read every single one of your books this year. And Secrets of Our House, to me,
without a murder was your closest for me towards a thriller, since I'm in a very big thriller book club.
Yeah.
And I said to the girls that I could see this as a movie because of that ending, the propulsive ending. But starting with that book and then going to the other year in Cerebi, and then this one with the Little House. If you want to tell the rest of these girls who may or may not have been following you, you kind of built your own little mini house in the backyard, and you and your family love to go traveling to these little houses in the woods. And do you do your writing there? I know you always like to kind of have your quiet space, but can you fill us in if there's like this house connection, it feels like?
Yeah, it's okay. So in 2020, actually in the pandemic, before that, I had been looking at these they're like little Scandinavian, beautiful, tiny homes that you could purchase. We have an acre, so not a ton of land, but I've been looking at those for a while and just like, gosh, I really want one of those for a writing studio. And then with the pandemic and everybody being all in one space, I was going nuts. It's like, I need my own separate space. So I bought one and put it in our backyard and outfitted it with all of my favorite things, writing wise. My husband actually ended up getting one for him. He's a breathwork practitioner, but also loves to paint. And so we had our, two little tiny homes and our fire pit in between. And on New Year's Day of last year, I went out to go to my studio and discovered that it had a fire that I was not aware of. I had left a candle burning that caught a statue on fire. We had actually gone to some tiny homes. There's a tiny home community about 90 minutes from Nashville that we stay at a lot, actually. And so my studio had been burning for days and I didn't know it. And it finally extinguished itself. But on that day, on New Year's Day, I opened the door and I mean, everything was black. I had all of my clients' books, my first edition books that I'd gotten, my favorite thing, just all of my favorite things gone. So my husband took about 4 or 5 months to he just kind of redid it. And he was like, we're going to make it better than before. And so it took a lot of work to kind of get that back. And now I love it even more. And that is primarily where I write. But we do visit a lot of these tiny home communities. I actually would love one elsewhere to go like vacation in. And I love having these little like sacred kind of separate spaces.
Oh,
That's
how
super cool, and I'm
devastating.
very envious.
Just don't leave a candle burning. Don't do that.
Okay,
Oh,
D. Driscoll, your glasses, are these to help you sleep?
yes. So I am a freak about light pollution. Like it's so funny. I would never have the overhead lights on once the sun goes down. We're crazy in our household. I'm very into circadian health and getting sunlight into my eyes and reducing artificial light at night. But being a writer, we're behind screens all day, blue light toxicity, EMF. So I got these, they're called Viva rays. So like during the day, they're yellow. They mimic natural sunlight. I use them when I'm, writing. Then once the sun goes down, I clip on these orange lenses, which mimic the sunset. And then right before I go to sleep, about an hour before, I switch to red lenses, which mimics firelight, which ancestrally we would be out staring into a fire before we go to bed. And it has changed my sleep, my energy. I don't have any lulls. I know they look ridiculous, but it's kind of a non-negotiable for me now. So I'm that weird lady in the orange glasses.
I thought
They're
they were
very
just
cool.
like, I thought you were making a statement.
yeah.
I was like, this is great. That's
But they were very fashionable. Yeah.
yeah. We're all intrigued. Kelly says, where do I get
Yeah.
these?
They
So
are
interested.
They're amazing. And like, even for kids and stuff, like I won't watch movies or anything without them. Because again, we're getting so much blue light and there are things you can do, on your phone, there's software on your computer. But even if you're out, like if I do events and stuff at night, I'll wear these and it just doesn't mess with your hormones and you'll Because if any of us, if we look at our phones, even like an hour before bed or doing this, we don't produce melatonin the way that we should. And these glasses kind of mitigate all that and help you kind of, you know, our hormones act as they should.
But don't be
Oh.
fooled. She is a very stylish woman, and she's got
Yeah.
a stylist that I would just dream to have.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Yes,
Oh,
we were talking
your
about your
fashion's
author
so
photos
amazing.
too.
Oh,
Like, your
thank you.
author
I did
photos
a
are amazing.
I don't take picture. I'm not it had been forever since I'd done a photo shoot, but I was rebranding because my business used to be called Right Way. And then I was kind of rebranding myself into this book doula. So I did this photo shoot. And yeah, it was so fun. I had a lot of fun. My daughter was there the whole time. And that was
Aw.
really special to, you know, to have her there, kind of seeing all that, which was great.
Viva Rays. Okay, that's awesome. Well, before we let you go, can we grab a picture?
Of course. Yes, I was
Okay.
going to do that as well.
So if you
Perfect.
have your book, grab it. If not, no big deal. But Ivana is going to be our picture
Yes,
girl.
I will take my photo. Let me hold my, okay. Okay, so. Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, I'm gonna count to three. Ready?
Okay.
1, 2, smile. Okay, I got it.
Awesome. Well, Ria, thank you so much. This was amazing. We learned so much about the book and just publishing in general. And we're so excited for 2024 for you. It's going to be such a big year, and we can't wait to read both of your books next year.
And I'm going to find out where that book is in the mail to you.
Oh, thanks.
I want you to
I
read
would
it.
love it.
Thank you
Aw.
also.
Thank you. This was so fun.
Yay, thank you. It's such a pleasure. And I hope
You're
everybody
amazing.
has a great night. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Happy
Bye.
holidays.
Bye. Thanks,
Happy
ladies.
holidays. Bye, Ria.
Bye.
I'm going to stop recording.
Come-
Thanks for joining, everyone.